Welcome. I'm Rob Wolcott, a professor of innovation at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and I'm pleased to be here with my friend and colleague, Carter Cast. Carter has written a book that I'm very excited about. Most business books, most personal books are about what works. How do we make the future happen? They pretend to have all the answers. Well, Carter has written a book that is important for all of us, and it's entitled The Right and Wrong Stuff: How Brilliant Careers Are Made and Unmade. What are those issues, those challenges that take us down primrose paths to eventually oblivion, and how do we recover if we have been derailed? It's a fascinating exploration of this from research and personal experience, and I couldn't be happier to have a conversation with you today, Carter. So let's start out with the right and wrong stuff. You talk in the book about career derailers. What is a derailer?
A derailing event is when someone gets off the track that they were on, whether it's their own making or due to somebody else. Their boss decides they aren't worthy of a promotion. They don't reach the expected level of achievement that they thought they should reach, and often the organization thinks they can reach, so they get demoted, they get fired, they flatline.
Isn't there some assumption in what you're stating that the path you are on is actually the right path? Is there something in your vision that has to do with, are we even on the right path in the first place?
You went straight to the hardest topic of the book, actually.
Great.
Yeah, there are these reasons that we derail, and I found 5 reasons over and over that impede the progress of talented people, and I can get into those. But what you asked specifically about being on the right path, I started calling the 6th, the great derailer, essentially. And it's basically, is this the right fit for me? Am I doing the right thing with my life, with my career? So I spent an entire chapter of that book talking about motives. Do you understand what motivates you? What drives you? What excites you? And are you in the right context?
So Carter, what are the 5 derailers and their archetypes?
First, someone who has difficulty with interpersonal issues. I label that person Captain Fantastic. He's the person that bruises you on the way to the corner office. Yep. The second one is the solo flyer, who's so good at doing things that she or he doesn't leverage their team. So they have difficulty managing and building their team. Right. The third one is version 1.0. This is the person who is resistant to change and isn't adaptable, isn't a learner, and with new technology and the rate of change we're seeing, they're left behind. The fourth one is the one-trick pony. Yep. They're lopsided. They're really good at one thing, but they haven't broadened their skill set, and they become pigeonholed in one particular area. The fifth one is the whirling dervish. This is somebody who doesn't deliver on promises because they're scattered, they don't prioritize well, they don't focus their effort.
They commit to everything, but they achieve very little.
Yeah, and people slowly but surely distance themselves from them because their word isn't their bond.
Do you think, Carter, that people really need to crash before they discover what their natural derailers are? Do they have to face the music before figuring out what their issues are?
Sometimes that you can put your arm around them and give them a little kidney punch.
Have you had kidney punches in your career?
Well, I've had the 2x4 across my face, which actually was quite...
I'd like to see that sometime.
It was quite effective in helping me with my derailment area. I got demoted.
What was your derailer? What, in retrospect, do you say that was the thing that was holding me back and I didn't know it?
Yeah. I had and it's a family trait. It's an anti-authority gene that we have. Not taking direction from heavy-handed bosses. I realized that I had this tendency, and so then I started developing sort of an awareness of certain situations where this tendency to be anti-authority kicks in. I just learned to regulate my behavior and sit on my hands and not respond, not react. So I still have this tendency, but I understand it well enough to not let it come out to play very often. And also, to your point earlier, you said, are you in the right context? I also learned that the right context for me wasn't a big company. It was in a fast-paced entrepreneurial setting where there isn't as much authority above you, right, and you have a lot of discretion over your work. I wrote this book so that a reader could maybe help understand what their own personality profile is as it relates to career options, right, so they don't take the wrong job.
What's the responsibility of corporations in helping people avoid and manage through derailment?
I think many corporations, this has become an afterthought, unfortunately. I think a lot of those developmental activities where you look at, you sit down with somebody at the review time, and instead of focusing on what went wrong in their review, you focus on how they can develop and further their skills and broaden their skills. I don't see that much happening. And so I think a really important takeaway for me was that you have to count on yourself to get these experiences. You can't count on your company to do it for you. You have to go find thought leaders to shadow. You have to raise your hand and say, I'd love to be on that task force. You have to ask for that rotation into a new assignment because they're not thinking about you in the long term. My target market for this book isn't just a middle manager who may be, trying to figure out how to get ahead in their career, or somebody early in their career. Another target market for this book is talent developers inside companies. Because if this is useful for them to help counsel their employees so that they do get more of a breadth of experience, or they do hone in on derailment areas, then I've achieved what I was trying to.
You work with hundreds of students, alumni come to you. I know myself, I've come for some CarterCast wisdom. What kind of advice do you give somebody who's in their 20s, who's early in their career, about how to figure out the right path, about how to navigate through perhaps an eventual derailment?
Students will come in and they'll have these usually it's around a job decision they have to make. Do I take the offer from, McKinsey, or do I take the offer from a Series A startup? They're huge, different opportunities. So I'll ask them a series of questions. Usually I start with, what drives you? What are you passionate about? Which emails do you open first? Which meetings do you look forward to? What are those topic areas that you have a deep interest in? So that's first, what interests you? Second thing I usually ask them is, what are you really good at? What are you skilled at? And then I ask them this question: what about you could hurt you? And I usually get this huh? And I'll say, no, what about you could impede your progress? You're so talented, you're so capable, but what could hurt you? And that's why I wrote this book.
How do people actually discover not only the derailers, but also the right stuff?
What I say to students is, become good at something that you have a natural ability in.
Right.
And then the power dynamic changes. Once you become good at something, you have more negotiation ability, you have more career leverage with the organization because they want your skill. They want access to your skill. And then when you have that leverage, you can start changing some of the terms around areas that are interesting to you. So let's say in my case, I worked really hard to get proficient at marketing. I did it for 15 years. And then from that, I've been able to craft a career now that's a little bit teaching, a little bit venture capital, and a little bit writing, because the companies or the groups that I work with want access to the skill that I developed. Right. So I've been able to negotiate terms. And so basically the purpose emerges out of you having negotiating power because you have a skill. What do high potential high performers who go far and fast, what competencies do they have? So, a typical company has 10 competencies, right? I found 3 competencies or strengths that high potential high performers with the right stuff have. And the people that are rated in the top 10% of a company, over and over, there were 3 things that came up that they do well. 1, they are able to form strong relations with those with whom they work and enlist them to their cause. It's a combination of influencing skills and ability to connect. Okay. Secondly, they were lifelong learners. They had this learning agility. They were curious, and they were always in this state of beta that we talked about. And the third thing is they had the ability to persevere.
Resilience.
Yeah, they could take a punch and get back up. They didn't stop till their project was complete. Even if they were there at 2 a.m., they were going to finish this and get it out the door because they said they would. So this dogged determination, this ability to enlist others, and this curiosity and desire to keep learning were the 3 things that I found that people with the right stuff had.
So I want to add a dimension to this, and you talk about it a lot in the book, and it has to do with the role of other people, So obviously in the point about personal relationships and navigating and bringing others to the table and all of this, it's reflected there. Talk a little bit about the role of other people.
Professor, I think from Carnegie Mellon, named Robert E. Kelly, wrote a book on stars. And he studied a company for years, a big company, and what did the stars do differently? And he came up with, besides taking the initiative, the other thing that they did was they developed a high-speed network of experts who all relied on each other.
What do you mean?
They sought out people in different functions or different parts of the business, people that knew what they were doing, and they established a strong relationship with those people. And so there became like a wink and a code amongst these high performers. They were all helping each other get their jobs done. So I say to students, when you get into a company, find out who those strong performers are and establish strong relationships with them and get into that circle of people that help each other do good work.
So Carter, we both work with students in their 20s. We also work with students in their 40s and early 50s, very accomplished. They're executive MBA students, maybe they're alumni. How does the advice change when you get to that significant mid-career position?
You know, the version 1.0 archetype, that is really something to watch for, which is you have to stay adaptable because of the rate of change we're seeing with, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, all the technology changes, the globalization. You have to stay curious. You have to keep having that learner's mindset, that beginner's mindset, because so many people that I talk to that are in, say, 45 or 50, and they don't know what's next, and they're worried that they're becoming dinosaurs and that their skills are outdated. So you have to constantly be pushing yourself to learn. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think you have to be thinking one or two steps ahead on what you want to do next. Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, he called it ABZ. A's what you're doing now, B's what you're thinking of doing next, and Z's your fallback if everything goes to hell in a handbasket. I would amend that and say it's ABCZ. A's what you're doing now, B's what you're doing next, C's what's out 5 years that you're gonna try to figure out how to work towards. So the number of times I've had friends come to me and say, they might be in their late 50s and they say, I got laid off and I don't know what to do. 5 years before they got laid off, are they thinking about what to do next after this next job? So you've gotta be thinking about how to bridge your way into the next career while you're in the current career, which means going to conferences, learning new skills, going and getting additional training. But that is essential. It's thinking out ahead to try to figure out what's around the next corner instead of just assuming that what you're doing now is going to hold true for the next 10 years, because it's not.
Carter Cass, thank you so much. This is a gift to all of us. While I was reading the book, so many things were resonating with me. I felt in myself some of these challenges and issues and also these opportunities. What Professor Cass has provided us all with is another opportunity for self-knowledge. We're certainly not the first to say this, but know thyself. As the world changes, as you change individually as a human being, it's your decision whether to take a proactive stance, reflect, consider, create a personal strategy for the future, or to let it just happen to you. Carter Cass, many thanks.
Thank you, Rob.